Regret hits hard after the divorce she started. The first time I realized my marriage was really over, it wasn't in the courtroom. It wasn't even when the judge banged the gavel and handed me the papers that made it official. It was the morning after I moved out. I woke up in a new apartment that smelled like fresh paint and someone else's history. The mattress was too firm. The street noise was louder than I'd expected. The fridge hummed in a way that made the silence feel even bigger. And then it hit me. There was no sound of a coffee maker sputtering in the kitchen. No soft shuffling of feet as Mark came in, still half asleep, rubbing his eyes, asking if I wanted toast. There was just nothing. When I'd filed for divorce 6 months earlier, I told myself I was doing the right thing. We'd been married nearly a decade, and somewhere along the way, the spark had faded. Our conversations revolved around bills, grocery lists, and whether we'd remember to take the trash out. I craved passion, excitement, something that made my heart race again. Friends told me I was too young to settle. Social media made me believe that real love should feel like fireworks every day. And so, in a moment of certainty that now feels like madness, I decided the problem was a marriage, not me. Mark didn't fight me on it. That should have been my first red flag. We split everything neatly, almost politely. The house was sold. The furniture divided. The dog went with me because I insisted. Mark kept his quiet dignity through it all, never raising his voice, never pleading for me to reconsider. At the time, I thought his calmness meant he didn't care. Now I realize it meant he was letting me go because he loved me enough not to chain me to a life I didn't want. The first month in my new place felt exciting. I decorated however I wanted. I stayed out late without texting anyone. I filled my social calendar with brunches, happy hours, and nights out with friends. I told myself I was free. I posted smiling photos online, pretending I was thriving. But beneath the surface, little cracks started to form. It was small things at first. I'd cook dinner and instinctively make enough for two, only to scrape half of it into the trash. I'd watch a funny video and reach for my phone to send it to Mark before remembering that I wasn't supposed anymore. Then came the nights when I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was asleep or lying awake too. I started replaying old memories in my head. Not the arguments or the disappointments, but the quiet moments. The way he used to warm my hands in his during cold walks. The way he always remembered how I liked my tea. The way he could tell I'd had a bad day without me saying a word. I'd left because I thought love should be fireworks. Now I was realizing sometimes love is a steady flame. About 3 months after the divorce, I saw him for the first time. I was at the grocery store, staring at the shelves of pasta sauce, when I heard his voice. It was unmistakable, deep, warm, the sound of home. I turned, and there he was. He looked good, better than I expected, healthier, more relaxed, like someone who had set down a heavy load. We made small talk, both smiling too much, both pretending it wasn't awkward. I noticed he was holding a bottle of wine we used to share on Friday nights. When we said goodbye, he gave me a quick hug, friendly, nothing more. But as I walked away, my throat tightened. I realized I wasn't ready to see him happy without me. I kept busy after that. I went on a few dates, trying to convince myself I was ready. But every man I met, I compared to Mark. None of them knew the little things about me. None of them felt like home. And that's when the regret began to settle in. At first, it was like a background hum, something I could ignore if I kept myself distracted. But slowly it grew louder. It started whispering to me in the quiet moments. You made a mistake. 6 months after the divorce, I hit my first real low. It was a rainy Sunday, the kind of day we used to spend curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching old movies. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. For the first time, I allowed myself to say it out loud. I miss him. It was barely a whisper, but it felt like a confession. I told everyone, my friends, my family, even myself, that I was happier now. Saying those 3 words felt like admitting defeat. That night, I opened a box I'd shoved into the back of my closet. Inside were little pieces of our life together. photos, birthday cards, ticket stubs from concerts we'd gone to. I sat on the floor for hours, holding each item like it was a relic from a lost civilization. One photo stopped me cold. It was from our trip to New Orleans, both of us laughing as a street musician played behind us. My hair was messy from the wind, his shirt was wrinkled, and we looked happy, genuinely, effortlessly happy. I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred, and then I cried. Not the quiet tears I'd shed before, but deep, ugly sobs that left me gasping for air. It wasn't just that I missed him. It was that I knew I'd never have that version of him, or us, again. After that night with the photo box, I couldn't get Mark out of my head. The more I tried not to think about him, the more memories surfaced. Not just the big ones like our wedding day or vacations, but the tiny, insignificant moments that suddenly meant everything. Like how he used to turn on the car's seat warmers for me in winter before I even asked. Or how he'd always make sure the first pancake was mine, because he knew I liked the slightly uneven one that came out before the pan was hot enough. These details haunted me because they were proof that I hadn't just left a good man. I'd left a man who loved me in ways I didn't even notice until they were gone. By week 2 of this emotional freefall, I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. I started drafting a message to him. Not a, let's get back together kind of message. At least that's what I told myself. But something light. Something like, hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. I typed it out and deleted it 5 times. Every version felt either too cold or too desperate. Finally, after an hour of staring at my phone, I sent a short one. Hey, Mark, I know it's been a while. I'd really like to catch up sometime, if you're open to it. The second I hit send, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. He didn't respond that day. Or the next. I told myself he was just busy. But by the 3rd day, my optimism started to crack. On the 4th day, he replied. The message was short, polite, and devastating. Hi, I'm doing well. I don't think catching up will be a good idea right now. I hope you're okay. That was it. No anger. No bitterness. Just a quiet, firm no. It shouldn't have surprised me. I was the one who ended it. But it still felt like a punch to the gut. I spent that night pacing my apartment, replaying the breakup in my head. I'd imagined back then that if I ever wanted him back, it would be simple. That I could show up, apologize, and he'd be there, arms open, ready to forgive. The reality was far harsher. Mark wasn't waiting for me. He'd moved forward, and I was still stuck in reverse. A few weeks later, the universe decided to twist a knife. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a photo of him at a vineyard, smiling with a woman I didn't recognize. Her hand rested casually on his arm. They looked comfortable. Happy. I clicked on her profile. She wasn't just pretty. She radiated this easy, natural warmth in every picture. Her captions were funny, self-deprecating, and kind. I hated her instantly, but the truth was, she seemed right for him. That night, I couldn't stop picturing them together. Did he take her to our favorite Thai place? Did he hold her the same way he used to hold me? Did he look at her and think, this is better? It was like an invisible thread between us had finally snapped. He wasn't mine anymore, not even in theory. The days that followed were the darkest. I stopped going out as much. My friends, the same ones who had encouraged me to leave, didn't really know what to say now. They'd been my cheerleaders when I was chasing freedom and self-discovery. But now that I was drowning in regret, they avoided the subject altogether. I didn't blame them. I'd been so sure of myself, so determined to prove I was making the right choice, that I hadn't left room for the possibility of failure. One night, about 2 months after his message, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to our old neighborhood. I told myself I just wanted to see the house, to remember the life we built. The windows were dark, the yard neatly kept. A new car sat in the driveway, not one I recognized. As I sat there, engine idling, I saw them, Mark and the woman from Instagram, walking up the path with takeout bags in hand, laughing at something she'd said. They didn't see me. I watched them disappear inside, the porch light casting a warm glow around them. It was the kind of scene we usually create together. Ordinary, simple, but beautiful in its own quiet way. And it shattered me. Driving home that night, I cried so hard I had to pull over. It wasn't just jealousy. It was the finality of it all. I had wanted space, adventure, freedom. But standing there in the ruins of my own choices, I finally understood. Freedom without love felt like a cage. Over the next weeks, the grief shifted into something heavier. Acceptance. Not the kind you feel when you've made peace with something, but the kind that comes when you realize there's nothing left to fight for. I stopped checking his social media. I deleted the half-written messages from my phone. I put the photo box back in the closet, not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed to stop torturing myself. When people ask me now if I regret the divorce, I tell them the truth. Yes, with everything in me, but regret doesn't rewind time. It just teaches you in the cruelest way possible that you should have valued what you had before it slipped through your fingers. By the time summer rolled around, I was no longer in free fall. I wasn't okay, not by a long shot, but I wasn't crying grocery store aisles anymore. My life had settled into a strange, muted rhythm. I worked, I ate, I slept. I made small talk with coworkers, laughed at jokes that didn't really land, and scrolled endlessly on my phone to fill the quiet. It was a fragile kind of stability, the kind that could shatter if I let my mind wander too far into the past. Therapy helped. At first, I'd gone just a vent, to unload the endless cycle of I messed up. But over time, my therapist stopped letting me circle the same drain. She made me talk about my future, not in some grand, romantic way, just in small, human terms. What does a good day look like for you now? She'd ask. The first time, I didn't know how to answer. Eventually, I started piecing it together. A morning where I made my bed. Coffee I brewed just for me. Cooking a meal from scratch, even if no one else was there to eat it. Then came the barbecue. A mutual friend of ours, Jenna, was hosting a casual get-together in her backyard. I almost didn't go. Jenna had stayed friends with both of us after the divorce, and I knew there was a real chance Mark would be there. The thought of seeing him made my stomach knot. But avoiding him forever wasn't realistic. And deep down, I wanted to know if I could handle it. When I walked into the yard, I spotted him almost immediately. He was standing near the grill, holding a beer, talking to a couple of people I didn't recognize. The sunlight caught in his hair, and for a split second, it was like no time had passed at all. He saw me, and his smile was warm but measured, friendly, not intimate. We exchanged a few polite words. How have you been? Work's been busy. The weather's great today. It wasn't strained. Exactly. But it wasn't the effortless flow we once had. There was a carefulness to the way he spoke, as if we were both tiptoeing around a landmine neither of us wanted to trigger. We didn't talk for long. Someone called him over to help carry something, and I was left standing there, beer in hand, watching him laugh with people I didn't know. He seemed lighter, not happy in some flashy, over-the-top way, just at ease. It was a different kind of peace than I remembered, the kind you get when you let go of something heavy and decided not to pick it up again. At one point in the afternoon, I caught him looking at me from across the yard, not in a longing way, not with any hint of regret, just a soft acknowledgement, like we were two people who had once known each other in a way no one else ever would. And that alone was worth a nod. I don't know why, but that look hurt more than if he'd ignored me completely. When I left that evening, I didn't cry. I didn't drive past our old house. I didn't open the photo box. Instead, I sat in my apartment in the quiet, feeling a strange sense of finality. It wasn't a door slamming shut. That had happened months ago. It was more like standing in an empty room and realizing there was nothing left to pack. For the first time, I wasn't imagining some future reunion. I wasn't mentally rehearsing an apology or wondering if he still thought about me. I just remembered us. That night, I finally understood something I've been resisting for months. Some people are meant to be a chapter in your life, not the whole book. Mark had been my safe place for over a decade, and I destroyed that. But it also been the one to teach me how precious and fragile real love can be. In the weeks after the barbecue, something shifted. I still thought about Mark, but it wasn't with the same sharp pang of loss. It was softer now, like touching a scar instead of an open wound. I stopped checking his social media entirely, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that knowing every detail of his life wouldn't change mine. It wouldn't bring him back, and it wouldn't undo the choices I'd made. One Sunday morning, I went for a walk through the park. It was warm, with that early hint of autumn in the air. I passed couples walking hand in hand, families chasing kids through the grass, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel like the universe was mocking me. I sat on a bench and just breathed. No phone, no distractions, just the sound of leaves rustling and kids laughing in the distance. It hit me then. The life I'd had with Mark was over. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. That's not to say I didn't regret it. I did. I probably always will. But regret can either keep you chained to the past, or it can teach you how to walk differently in the future. And I was tired of being chained. A month later, I saw Mark again, purely by accident. I was at a bookstore, thumbing through a novel, when I heard his voice. I looked up, and there he was, standing 2 aisles over, holding hands with the same woman from Instagram. She smiled at him in that easy, open way I'd once smiled at him. And he smiled back in a way I hadn't seen in years, relaxed, unburdened, happy. They didn't see me, and I didn't make my presence known. I simply watched for a moment, then turned and walked out. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, I realized something important. Mark's chapter in my life had ended, but hadn't been erased. It would always be there, full of love, mistakes, laughter, and lessons. And I could carry those lessons forward without dragging the pain with them. People like to talk about the one that got away, as if it's always some cruel twist of fate. But sometimes, the one who gets away is the one you push away. And the hardest part isn't losing them. It's knowing you had them, and you let them go. That day, I went home and took the photo box out one last time. I looked through every picture, every ticket stub, every love note, and I let myself cry. Not because I wanted him back, but because I finally knew I couldn't have him back. When I was done, I put the lid on the box, slid onto the highest shelf in my closet, and left it there. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt a quiet kind of peace. Not the peace of getting what you want, but the peace of finally laying something down and walking away.